John Mercer stared out the viewport as his ship approached the massive Galactic Council station. The structure hung in space like a glittering snowflake, its crystalline arms stretching for kilometers in every direction. Lights pulsed along its surface, a visual language he was only beginning to understand. "Ambassador Mercer, we're cleared for final approach," said the pilot. "The Council representatives will meet you in Docking Bay 7. John straightened his formal uniform and touched the small Earth pin on his collar. He was the first human to officially represent Earth to the Galactic Council, a responsibility that weighed heavily on his shoulders. "Remember the briefing," said Linda Reeves, his aide. "Some species consider direct eye contact threatening. Others find our hand gestures confusing." "I studied all 12 council races for months," John replied with a small smile. "Though I suspect all our preparation might still fall short." The ship docked with a gentle bump. John took a deep breath and moved toward the airlock. This moment would go down in human history. First formal contact with the Galactic Council after 5 years of limited communication. The doors slid open to reveal a reception party of 6 different alien species. John recognized the tall, blue-skinned Arctians, the insectoid Kalin, and the almost human-like Vexor. Others were so strange that his mind struggled to process their forms. "Ambassador Mercer," said the Vexor representative, speaking through a translation device, "welcome to Council Central. I am Delegate Zorn." John bowed slightly. "Thank you for receiving Earth's delegation. We come in peace and friendship." The Kalin representative clicked its mandibles. "Let us hope your species maintains such sentiments." The comment felt oddly threatening, but John maintained his diplomatic smile as they led him through gleaming corridors. Aliens of countless species moved about their business, many stopping to stare at the human. John was brought to his quarters to rest before the formal introduction the next day. Once alone, he activated his secure tablet to review Earth's objectives, establish trade agreements, share cultural knowledge, and most importantly, secure Earth's position as a protected developing world. Early intelligence had revealed that the Council classified planets into tiers. Earth desperately needed Tier 3 status at minimum to avoid potential resource management by more advanced civilizations. The next morning, John stood before the full Galactic Council. 12 representatives sat in a semicircle above him, each from a founding species of the interstellar government. "Humans of Earth," began the Arxian counselor, "you have achieved faster-than-light travel sooner than anticipated. The Council recognizes your species' rapid advancement." John smiled. "Thank you. Humanity is eager to share our culture, art, and scientific discoveries with the galactic community." The Vexor counselor leaned forward. "Your species advanced from primitive flight to FTL travel in less than 200 cycles. This rate of technological development is concerning." "We are a curious and innovative people," John replied carefully. "Curious indeed," said the Kalin representative. "Our monitors have detected unusual weapons development in your solar system." John felt sweat on his brow. Earth's military preparations were supposed to be hidden, merely defensive measures. Any developing world would take precautions when learning they're not alone in the universe. The council members exchanged glances. John sensed the mood shifting against him. Later that day, John used his diplomatic access to enter the council archives. If Earth was going to navigate this political minefield, he needed more information. The data he found disturbed him deeply. Records of other aggressive species that had been contained, restricted, or worse. Then he found the file labeled Earth Containment Strategies. His blood ran cold as he read plans to limit human expansion, control their technology, and eventually place Earth under direct council authority. As John downloaded the files to his secure device, alarms suddenly blared. The door hissed open, and council security forces rushed in. The Vexor security chief looked at the screen, then at John. "Ambassador Mercer of Earth, you are detained for espionage against the Galactic Council." John raised his hand slowly. "I was conducting research within my diplomatic rights." "Take him," the Vexor ordered. As the guards approached, John managed to press the emergency signal on his communicator, the one that would alert Earth that something had gone terribly wrong. Susan Miller had never traveled beyond Mars until now. As Earth's top space lawyer, she was used to handling disputes between colonies and corporations. But defending a human ambassador accused of espionage by the Galactic Council was a different challenge entirely. Her ship docked at the same station where John Mercer had been arrested 2 weeks ago. Council security officers escorted her through gleaming corridors to the detention level. John looked tired when Susan entered his cell. His normally neat appearance was disheveled, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "They're setting me up," he said before Susan could speak. "This isn't a real trial. It's theater." Susan placed her briefcase on the table. "The President sent me with full authority to negotiate your release. Earth is taking this very seriously." "They should," John replied. "I found plans to contain Earth, restrict our development. Some council members want to make an example of us." Susan frowned. "Do you have proof?" "I managed to send partial data before they caught me, but they fabricated evidence claiming I was planning to sabotage council systems." Over the next 3 days, Susan reviewed the council's case against John. The evidence seemed solid on the surface: security footage, access logs, and even messages allegedly from John to Earth military about council vulnerabilities. But Susan spotted inconsistencies. Timestamps didn't match. Message formats weren't typical Earth protocols. The trial began in a large chamber with representatives from dozens of worlds in attendance. Susan immediately objected to the proceedings. "Ambassador Mercer is entitled to a neutral tribunal," she argued before the council. "The judging body cannot be the same entity that is bringing charges." The Vexor council member waved a dismissive hand. "Council law supersedes human legal concepts. This tribunal is properly constituted according to galactic statute." Susan watched as the council presented their evidence. She noted how the audience reacted with shock and murmurs at each new accusation. This was clearly a show trial. When Susan's turn came to defend John, her microphone mysteriously malfunctioned. After it was fixed, she found her speaking time had been cut in half. "The evidence against Ambassador Mercer has been tampered with," she declared. "The time codes on the security footage don't match station logs. The messages attributed to him use language patterns inconsistent with his other communications." The Callan council member chittered loudly. "Human deception tactics. You question the integrity of council evidence." "I do," Susan replied firmly, "and I request access to the original data files." "Request denied for security reasons," the Arxian council member stated. "This tribunal will proceed based on verified evidence only." During a recess, Susan met with John in a small room. "They're not even pretending to be fair," she said quietly. John nodded. "I overheard guards talking. There's a faction in the council that believes humans are too unpredictable. They want to use me to justify restricting Earth. I've been trying to contact other species representatives," Susan said. "Some seem troubled by this process, but they're afraid to speak out." A Vexor guard entered the room. "Time's up. Return to the chamber." As the trial resumed, Susan noticed a small alien, a species she didn't recognize, slip a data chip to her assistant. Later, when they checked it, they found internal council communications discussing how to manage the human problem and ensure the correct trial outcome. Susan presented this new evidence the next day. "This proves a conspiracy against Earth." The council chamber erupted in chaos. The Vexor security chief confiscated the chip immediately. The head counselor called for order. "These alleged documents are clearly forgeries," the council leader announced. "This attempt to undermine council authority will be added to the charges." Susan watched helplessly as her evidence was dismissed. She caught John's eye across the room and saw in his expression that he already knew what was coming. "The council has deliberated," announced the Vexor representative. "Ambassador John Mercer is found guilty of espionage, attempted sabotage, and actions against galactic peace. This tribunal will reconvene tomorrow to determine the sentence. As guards led John away, he turned to Susan. "Tell Earth to prepare," he said quietly. "They need to activate the contingency." The council chamber was packed with aliens from across the galaxy. Many had traveled for days to witness the sentencing of the human ambassador. Floating camera drones hovered throughout the room, broadcasting the proceedings to billions of beings on thousands of worlds. John Mercer stood tall in the center of the chamber, hands bound with energy restraints. His face remained calm despite knowing what was coming. Susan Miller sat nearby, still frantically reviewing legal documents for any last-minute option. The 12 council members entered and took their elevated seats. The Vexar representative, who had led the prosecution, stood first. Ambassador John Mercer of Earth has been found guilty of the most serious crimes against galactic peace and security, the Vexar announced. The evidence of human espionage is undeniable. The Council must send a clear message that such actions will not be tolerated from any species, especially from newcomers to our galactic community. Susan rose quickly. "I request permission to present new evidence of Ambassador Mercer's innocence." "Your request is denied," said the Arxian counselor. "All evidence has been considered. The time for defense has passed." The Callan counselor stepped forward. "This human represents a species that has shown alarming military development and aggressive tendencies. The sentence must reflect the severity of this threat." Susan watched in horror as each council member voted to approve the maximum penalty. Only one, the representative from a species called the Moliri, abstained. The head counselor spoke the final words. "John Mercer of Earth is hereby sentenced to immediate execution for crimes against the Galactic Council and threats to interstellar peace." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Execution was extremely rare in council space. Most serious crimes resulted in mind-wiping or permanent stasis. Susan jumped to her feet. "This violates all principles of justice. Earth will view this as an act of war." Security forces moved to restrain her. John looked at her and shook his head slightly. His message was clear. Don't make yourself a target too. A final communication link to Earth was permitted. President Richard Grant's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim as he was informed of the sentence. "This execution is nothing short of murder," the president said, his voice steady but filled with cold anger. "The council has made a mockery of its own laws. Earth demands John Mercer's immediate release." The Vexar counselor leaned forward. "Your demands carry no weight here. The sentence will be carried out as a lesson to Earth about its proper place in the galactic order." "Then hear this," said President Grant. "All human citizens are hereby ordered to leave council space immediately. All diplomatic channels between Earth and the Galactic Council are now closed." The council members seemed pleased by this reaction. The Callan representative clicked its mandibles in what Susan recognized as their version of laughter. "A primitive response," the alien said. "The humans retreat to lick their wounds." Vice President Laura Baker stepped into view beside the president. Her eyes were like ice as she addressed the council. "You have made a grave miscalculation," she said simply. "Remember that we warned you." The transmission cut off. Several council members exchanged concerned glances, but the Vexar representative dismissed the comment with a wave. "Proceed with the sentence," he ordered. John was led to the center of the chamber. He declined the traditional final statement, instead looking directly into the nearest camera drone, knowing his people were watching. The execution was swift. A beam of white energy enveloped John for 3 seconds. When it faded, nothing remained. Susan was escorted back to her ship with orders to leave immediately. As she departed, she noticed unusual activity around the station. Human ships were breaking orbit from every docking bay, all headed away from Council space. Her communications officer reported, "All Earth vessels are receiving the same coded message from home. Priority Omega." Susan didn't recognize the code, but she knew it wasn't standard diplomatic protocol. Far away on Earth, in the underground complex beneath Cheyenne Mountain, President Grant and his military advisors gathered in a secure room that hadn't been opened in years. The president placed his palm on a scanner and spoke clearly. Authorization grant 7 Delta Omega. Initiate Doomsday Protocol. Phase 1. Across Earth's solar system, hidden installations began to power up. On remote moons and asteroids, concealed weapons platforms activated. And deep in the void beyond Neptune, a fleet of ships that officially didn't exist received their long-prepared orders. 10 years earlier, the massive alien ship had appeared near Jupiter without warning. That first contact had changed everything for humanity. Earth's governments, usually divided, had united in a secret emergency session that lasted 5 days. General Alan Harris remembered that meeting clearly as he now sat in the war room beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The screens around him showed Earth's military forces going to high alert. "I never thought we'd actually need to use the protocol," said Admiral Ellen Wade, her fingers moving across her tablet as she authorized fleet movements. Ellen nodded. "When we created the contingency, many thought we were being paranoid." On the main screen, President Grant addressed the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Ambassador Mercer's execution was broadcast across Council space as a warning. "They expect us to accept their dominance." "Phase 1 is fully activated, Mr. President," Ellen reported. "All human ships have cleared Council territory. Our solar system defenses are online." The President's expression was grim. "Begin Phase 2. Admiral Wade pressed her palm against a biometric scanner. "Computer, authorization Wade 9 Echo Zulu. Activate Phase 2 of Doomsday Protocol." The room's lights dimmed briefly as power was redirected to priority systems. Across the solar system, hidden installations that had been monitoring Council communications for years began transmitting data back to Earth. "Sir," said a young officer at a monitoring station, "the Council is calling their action against Ambassador Mercer a necessary security measure. They're telling their citizens that Earth has agreed to a period of isolation for cultural development." Ellen wasn't surprised. "They think we're retreating." "Good. That's exactly what we want them to think." The meeting continued as military officers reported on their specific areas of responsibility. Earth's apparent withdrawal from galactic affairs was being carefully managed to look like submission. "What about the colonies?" asked Secretary of Defense Paul Rogers. "Evacuated as planned," Allen answered. "Mars and Luna bases appear abandoned, but are actually at full combat readiness. The mining operations in the asteroid belt have converted to weapons production." On another screen, Vice President Baker was speaking with leaders from other nations. "The public statements must show grief and anger, but not threat," she instructed. "We want the Council to believe we've accepted our place." Later that day, Allen met with the team that had created the Doomsday Protocol years earlier. Dr. Olivia Green, the lead scientist, brought up a holographic display of the Milky Way. "Our stealth probes have mapped these key Council systems," she said, highlighting dozens of points across the galaxy. "Their defensive capabilities are formidable, but have exploitable weaknesses." "What about their technology level?" Ellen asked. Olivia adjusted her glasses. "They're advanced, but not as advanced as they want us to believe. They've been in a technological plateau for nearly 1,000 years. They don't innovate like we do." "Because they don't have to," added Professor William Jones, the group's kinopsychologist. "The Council species evolved in stable environments. They value order above all. Humans evolved as adaptable survivors on a changing planet." Ellen nodded. "That's why they fear us. And why they'll underestimate us," William said. "Their psychological profiles suggest they'll interpret our withdrawal as submission. They won't expect a counterstrike." "How long until the fleet is ready?" Ellen asked his aide. "The hidden shipyards beyond Neptune report all vessels at 97% combat readiness," the aide responded. "The weapons we've been developing since first contact are installed and tested." Ellen remembered how humanity had appeared to embrace peaceful contact while secretly preparing for the worst. Earth's leaders had seen the truth in the first alien messages. The galaxy was not a friendly place for newcomers. The Council expects us to beg for forgiveness, Alan said, looking at the tactical display. They've never faced a species that prepared for betrayal from day one. In orbit around Pluto, the largest human battle fleet ever assembled waited in stealth mode. Ships that had been built in secret, weapons developed by studying alien technology, and soldiers trained for space combat, all hidden from Council surveillance. On Earth, normal life continued. People went to work, children attended school, and news channels reported on Ambassador Mercer's death as a diplomatic tragedy. No one outside the highest levels of government knew that the Doomsday Protocol had been activated. Ellen looked at the latest intelligence reports from Council space. They think they've contained us. They have no idea what's coming. The Grand Council chamber buzzed with celebration. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered for what many called a historic victory. Plates of exotic foods and glasses of colorful drinks passed among the attendees as they congratulated each other. The human threat has been contained, announced the Vexor counselor, raising a glass. Their retreat proves our wisdom in making an example of their ambassador. In a corner of the room, Delegate Kevin Peters watched the celebration with hidden disgust. Though he appeared fully Arctian with his blue skin and tall frame, Kevin was half-human, a secret known to only a few trusted allies. His mother had been an Arctian scientist, his father a human explorer who had contacted the Arctians years before official first contact. "You seem troubled," Delegate Peters said, a Callan representative, mandibles clicking softly. Kevin composed his features. "I merely wonder if we've truly understood the humans. My studies suggest they aren't a species to accept defeat so easily." The Callan waved a limb dismissively. "Their ships have fled. Their colonies are abandoned. They've gone silent. What more proof do you need of their submission?" Before Kevin could respond, the Vexor counselor called the formal meeting to order. All 12 members took their elevated seats while other delegates moved to viewing areas. "The human containment has proceeded exactly as planned," the Vexor announced. "Our intelligence services report their military has made no unusual movements. Their public broadcasts show only mourning for their executed spy, with no calls for revenge." Kevin requested permission to speak. When granted, he stood and addressed the council. "I believe we may be misinterpreting human behavior," he said carefully. "In human history, silence often precedes significant action. I recommend caution and perhaps opening new diplomatic channels." The Vexor counselor laughed. "Your concern is noted, Delegate Peters, but unnecessary. Our technological superiority is absolute. Even if the humans harbored thoughts of retaliation, they lack the capability. Several border monitoring stations have reported unusual stellar activity," Kevin persisted. "Gravitational anomalies have been detected near the human solar system." "Natural phenomena," dismissed the Callan counselor. "Our scientists have already examined the data." The council moved on to other matters, but Kevin noticed a few delegates exchanging worried glances. Not everyone was convinced of humanity's helplessness. After the meeting, Kevin met secretly with Delegate Mira from the Maliri, the one council member who had abstained from voting for execution. "The council is making a terrible mistake," Kevin said when they were alone. "I studied humans extensively. They're incredibly adaptive and plan for worst-case scenarios." Mira's translucent skin shimmered with concern. "I've reviewed the records of their ambassador's trial. The evidence was clearly fabricated, yet most species either didn't notice or didn't care." "The Vexor and Callan wanted a reason to contain Earth," Kevin said. "They fear any species that advances quickly, but their plan may backfire terribly." A junior aide interrupted them with an urgent message. "Council Intelligence requests an emergency session. New information about Earth has arrived." In the intelligence briefing room, a nervous analyst displayed images of the human solar system. "Our long-range scans show abandoned orbital platforms around Earth and its moon," the analyst explained. "Their Mars colony appears deserted. However, we're detecting unusual energy patterns beneath the surfaces of several moons in their outer system. The Vexor intelligence director showed little concern. Likely automated mining operations. The humans have retreated to their homeworld. There's more, the analyst continued. Our deep space monitors have detected brief energy signatures consistent with drive systems, but when we focus our sensors on those locations, nothing is there. Kevin felt a chill. He knew what this meant, but kept silent. Sensor malfunctions, decided the intelligence director. The human region has always had unusual stellar interference. The Council voted to send an inspection fleet to the human solar system to verify their compliance with isolation orders. The fleet would consist of 25 ships, a massive show of force meant to intimidate Earth. As the meeting adjourned, Kevin sent an encrypted message to his human contacts through channels established years ago. The message was simple: Council sending inspection fleet. 25 ships. Arrival in 7 days. He knew it might be considered treason. But after witnessing the injustice against Ambassador Mercer, Kevin had made his choice. If the Council wanted war with humanity, they would soon discover just how unprepared they were for what would follow. The Council inspection fleet approached the edge of Earth's solar system with confidence. 25 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers, moved in perfect formation. Captain Drez of the Vexor vessel Righteous Authority stood on his command bridge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. "We are entering the outer boundary of the human system," reported his navigation officer. No sign of activity on long-range scans. As expected, Drez said, "Begin recording for the Council report. Let the record show that humans have complied with isolation orders." The fleet continued inward, passing the gas giant Neptune. Its moons appeared quiet and lifeless in their scans. "Captain, should we conduct a closer inspection of those moons?" asked his science officer. There were reports of unusual energy readings in this region. "Unnecessary," Drez replied. "The humans have clearly retreated to their homeworld. We will proceed directly to Earth orbit for the formal inspection." As the fleet approached Uranus, a junior officer suddenly called out, "Captain, energy spike detected on the dark side of the 7th moon." Before Drez could respond, his tactical officer shouted, "Multiple new contacts," emerging from behind several moons and asteroids. The tactical display suddenly lit up with dozens of signals. Ships of an unfamiliar design were appearing all around them, seeming to materialize from empty space. "Impossible," Drez whispered. "Our sensors would have detected them." His communications officer turned from her console with shock on her face. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from one of the vessels. They identify themselves as the Earth Defense Fleet." "Put it on screen," Drez ordered, his confidence faltering for the first time. A human female in a dark uniform appeared on the main viewer. "Council Inspection Fleet, this is Admiral Mary Donovan of the Earth Defense Forces. Your presence in this system is a violation of newly established Earth space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of the system." Drez stood taller. "This system falls under Council jurisdiction by treaty. Humans have no authority to deny our inspection. Stand down your vessels immediately." Admiral Donovan's expression didn't change. The treaty was voided when the Council executed Ambassador Mercer in violation of galactic law. "You have 30 seconds to power down weapons." "This is absurd," Drez said to his officers. "Their ships cannot possibly match our technology. Raise shields and prepare to continue our mission. Send word to the other vessels to form defensive positions." The communications officer tried to relay the orders but shook her head. "Sir, our communications are being jammed. I cannot reach the other ships." On the tactical display, Drez watched with growing alarm as the human vessels moved with impossible speed into attack positions. Their ships were smaller than Council vessels, but appeared to be almost entirely weapons platforms. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human ships," reported the science officer. "Their weapon systems are unlike anything in our database." "Fire warning shots," Drez ordered. "Show them our power." The righteous authority fired its forward cannons. The energy beams that could shatter asteroids seemed to bend around the nearest human ships, missing them entirely. "What just happened?" Dres demanded. "They appear to have some form of energy deflection technology," the science officer said, his voice shaking. "Sir, their weapons are powering up." The first human attack came not from energy weapons, but from small, fast-moving projectiles that somehow passed directly through the Vexor ship's shields. Several Council vessels suddenly lost power, drifting helplessly in space. "Our shields had no effect," the tactical officer shouted. "They're using targeted EMP technology we've never encountered before." Dres watched in horror as his supposedly superior fleet was systematically disabled by the human forces. The few Council ships that managed to fire their weapons found their shots mysteriously missing their targets or being absorbed by unknown defensive systems. Within minutes, 15 Council ships had been rendered powerless. The remaining 10, including Dres's command vessel, found themselves surrounded by human vessels that outnumbered them 4-1. Admiral Donovan's face appeared on the screen again. "Your fleet has been neutralized with minimal damage. We could have destroyed you, but Earth prefers to avoid unnecessary casualties. Your disabled vessels will be towed to the edge of the system. You may return to Council space with a message. The isolation of Earth is over." The real response to Ambassador Mercer's execution has only just begun. Dred stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human vessels were now visible on all sensors, and there were hundreds of them, far more than any intelligence report had suggested possible. How had they built such a fleet in secret? And where had they obtained weapons technology that could bypass Council defenses? "Sir," his first officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Dres realized his career was over. He had led a prestigious Council fleet into a humiliating defeat. "Stand down all weapons," he said. "Prepare to be escorted out of the system." Admiral Mary Donovan stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution, watching the tactical displays as human battle groups spread across Council space. For 10 years, Earth had been building this fleet in secret locations throughout supposedly uninhabited systems that the Council had ignored. "Admiral, Beta Group reports successful capture of the Proxima Relay Station," her tactical officer reported. "All communication lines between the core worlds and the outer rim have been severed." Mary nodded. "And Alpha Group?" "The warp gate near Centauri is under our control. Council reinforcements cannot reach this sector." The Doomsday Protocol was unfolding exactly as planned. While the Council had focused on Earth itself, humanity had been establishing hidden bases and shipyards throughout nearby star systems. Small stealth ships had mapped Council space, identified strategic targets, and prepared the battlefield long before the first shot was fired. "What's the status of the civilian evacuation?" Mary asked. "All Council civilians are being safely transported out of combat zones," replied her executive officer. "We're making it clear this is not a war against their people, only against the Council leadership." This was a key part of the strategy. Earth wanted to avoid being seen as aggressors by the general population of Council worlds. The careful targeting of military and government facilities while protecting civilians was designed to win support, or at least prevent united opposition. On the Council capital world, panic spread through the government district. Emergency alarms sounded as reports flooded in from across Council space. "Human forces have appeared in 17 systems simultaneously," reported a breathless Callan officer to the assembled Council. "They've disabled our primary defense grid and seized control of major warp gates and communication hubs." The Vexor Councilor slammed his fist on the table. "Impossible. Their technology is inferior to ours." Kevin Peters, the half-human Arxian delegate, stepped forward. "Clearly, we were wrong. The humans shared only a fraction of their capabilities with us." "How could they hide such a fleet?" demanded the Callan Councilor. "Our surveillance networks would have detected shipbuilding on this scale." "Because you were looking in the wrong places," Kevin said. "Humans are masters of deception. While you watched Earth, they built their forces in the spaces between stars. in systems you considered worthless. Reports continued to arrive, each worse than the last. Human forces had disabled planetary defense systems on 3 major worlds without firing a shot. Their technology somehow bypassed Council security measures that had been considered impenetrable. In a distant system, Commander Sam Carter led a strike team against a secret Council research facility. Their mission was to recover data on Council weapons development. Defensive systems neutralize, reported his second-in-command. Our override codes worked perfectly. Sam nodded. For years, human intelligence agents have been gathering information, planting backdoors in Council systems, and preparing for this day. Download everything and plant the quantum disruptors, Sam ordered. We leave no trace. The human teams moved with practiced efficiency. Council security forces found their weapons mysteriously non-functional when confronted with human soldiers. Doors designed to withstand heavy bombardment opened at the touch of human devices. Back on the Retribution, Admiral Donovan received updates from across Council space. Every target in the first wave had been secured with minimal casualties on either side. Send the message to all Council worlds, she ordered. Throughout Council space, communication systems suddenly broadcast the same video on all frequencies. President Daniel Wright of Earth appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. People of the Galactic Council, I speak to you directly. The execution of our ambassador was not an act of justice, but an attempt to intimidate humanity. Your leaders believed we would accept subjugation. They were wrong. The president's calm, measured tone carried more menace than any shouted threat. Our forces now control key strategic points throughout Council space. We could have responded with destruction, but instead we demonstrate restraint. We seek not conquest, but recognition. Earth will take its rightful place among the stars as an equal, not as a subject race. On the Council capital, the Arxian delegation led by Delegate Mira requested an emergency meeting with Earth representatives. Unlike the Vexer and Kalen who had pushed for confrontation, the Arxians had always advocated for diplomatic solutions. We need to negotiate, Mira told the Council. The humans have shown remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed our fleets but chose disablement instead. The Vexer counselor snarled, We do not negotiate with primitive species who rebel against proper authority. Kevin Peters looked around the room at the frightened faces of council members who had never imagined their authority could be challenged. I don't think you understand, he said quietly. The humans aren't asking for negotiation. They're setting terms. The Grand Council chamber fell silent as President Daniel Wright entered. No human had ever set foot in this sacred space except for Ambassador John Mercer, who had stood trial here weeks earlier. Now the council members watched with a mixture of fear and anger as Earth's leader walked confidently to the center of the room. Unlike the diplomatic uniforms worn by most species representatives, President Wright wore a simple black suit with a small pin showing Earth and its moon. He carried no weapons, but 4 silent human guards stood at each entrance to the chamber. This emergency session of the Galactic Council will come to order, announced the Arxian moderator, one of the few council members who had opposed Mercer's execution. The Vexer counselor spoke first, his voice tight with fury. This meeting is being held under protest. The human military actions against council facilities are acts of war. President Wright remained calm. Just as the execution of our ambassador was an act of war against Earth. The difference is that we came prepared for your hostility. The Callan counselor's mandibles clicked rapidly. Your forces have illegally seized council property and violated sovereign territories of multiple species. And yet, Wright replied, we have caused minimal casualties. No civilians have been harmed. No worlds have been damaged. We could have responded to Ambassador Mercer's murder with destruction, but we chose a more measured approach. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Everyone present knew that human forces now controlled key strategic points throughout council space. The supposedly inferior humans had bypassed defenses thought impenetrable and neutralized military assets with surgical precision. What are your demands? Asked the Maliri representative, one of the few willing to acknowledge the new reality. President Wright looked around the chamber. The complete reorganization of the Galactic Council. Earth will take its place as a full member with equal standing to the founding species. All technology restrictions against developing worlds will be lifted, and those responsible for Ambassador Mercer's unjust trial and execution will face proper justice. "This is blackmail," shouted the Vexor counselor. "We will never submit to human demands." Wright's expression hardened. "Then you should understand what you're refusing." He nodded to one of his aides, who activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a star system unfamiliar to most present. "This is an uninhabited system 20 light-years from here," Wright explained. "To demonstrate what happens if you choose conflict over cooperation, we will now activate Phase 3 of the Doomsday Protocol." On the display, a small human vessel appeared near the system's sun. It released what looked like a tiny probe that disappeared into the star's corona. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the star began to pulse strangely. The council members watched in horror as the star's light wavered, dimmed, and then suddenly vanished, along with its planets. The entire star system simply disappeared from existence. "What you just witnessed is our quantum displacement technology," Wright said into the stunned silence. "It doesn't destroy matter. It shifts it into another dimension entirely. We have similar devices positioned near 27 key council worlds, including this one." The chamber erupted in panic. The Vexor counselor's face had turned pale. "This is a trick. No species has such technology." Kevin Peters stepped forward. "It's not a trick. Earth has developed in ways you refuse to understand. They've had this capability for years, but chose not to use it until you gave them no choice." President Wright raised his hand for silence. "We don't want to use these weapons. Ambassador Mercer came to you in peace, offering friendship between equals. His execution was your final mistake. Now you must decide. Will you accept a new council where Earth and all developing worlds have equal standing, or will you continue on a path that ends in your removal from this universe?" The council chambers remained silent for long moments. Finally, the Arxian counselor stood. "I move that we accept the human terms and begin restructuring the council immediately." One by one, other council members voiced their agreement, some reluctantly, others with visible relief that a worse outcome had been avoided. 6 months later, a memorial service was held for Ambassador John Mercer in the redesigned council chambers. Representatives from over 100 worlds attended, including many previously excluded from council participation. Admiral Donovan stood next to President Wright as they unveiled a statue of Mercer at the chamber's entrance. "He would be proud of what his sacrifice accomplished," she said quietly. Wright nodded. "The galaxy is changing for the better. Equality rather than dominance. Cooperation rather than submission." Outside the windows of the chamber, ships from dozens of species flew in formation, including the distinctive silhouettes of Earth vessels. No longer hidden, humanity's fleet now served openly as peacekeepers in a reformed galactic community. On the base of John Mercer's statue, a simple inscription read, "His death changed the stars themselves. From great sacrifice came greater unity."